Okay, my top 3 picks. If someone said to me, you have to choose 3 carbon shoes and you can't have any others and they've got to do you for the next couple of years, I would not. Hi everyone, welcome to my carbon super shoe review. I think the important thing to remember with shoe reviews is shoes are like really personal. So what works for somebody might not work for somebody else. I also find it really annoying when people who know nothing about your run history or your background or your injury history or your shoe history try and give you advice and tell you what shoes you should be wearing. So just remember and be mindful, I guess, that this is my personal opinion of these shoes. But where I think it might be useful is a lot of these shoe reviews, or especially on the super shoes, are done by great runners, like super fast runners. So I feel like they don't really apply, or they're less applicable to your average type runner. And I would consider myself like an average type runner. I'm not a super fast runner. My PBs, for some reference, my 5K PB is 19:20. My 10K PB is around 40 minutes. My half marathon PB is around 1:26, and my marathon PB is around 3:12. So not slow, but definitely not fast in relation to like great professional triathletes or good runners. So I hope you find it useful. I'm going to start by giving a rundown on all of these shoes. Also, another thing to note, I paid for all of these shoes out of my own money, so none of them were given to me for free. So this is a completely unbiased opinion. I'm going to start by running through the shoes one by one and just explaining what they feel like, how much I've run in them, what I did like and what I didn't like. And then towards the end, I'll maybe give you my top 3. Also important to note in this review, none of these shoes I have like tested with lactate or VO2 max or speed on the treadmill or biomechanics software, anything like that. It's purely based on my opinion from wearing them in training and in racing, and just the general feel of the shoes. I've worn a lot of them in both training and racing, and I've pretty much been going through trying all these carbon shoes for, well, I guess like nearly 2 years now. So some of the models that I've got here, they may be updated now. There might be newer models of them, but I think that only applies to 1 or 2 of the pairs. Okay, first shoe up is the Saucony Endorphin Pro Plus. I actually wore the Endorphin Pro, the first version. I also bought the Endorphin Pro 2, the updated version, and this was like the 3rd reiteration of the Saucony Endorphin Pro, which they call the Plus. The only difference between this and the earlier 2 models is the upper. It's a much lighter upper, but the sole, the carbon, the general fit, everything else is the same except for this super light upper that they've used in this model. I really like these shoes. They feel great. They've got what they call a speed roll technology. So if you're a heel striker, I feel like these are like almost the perfect shoe, because you can actually see by the shape of them. Maybe you can't see that on there. They've got this really defined, it almost like forces you to land on your heel. So for heel strikers, I think this is a really good shoe. I love these. I've worn these to death in training, and I've worn them, I think, for 1 or 2 70.3 races. They are quite hard underfoot. I like a firm underfoot feel. I don't like shoes that are too spongy or soft underfoot. I like to be able to feel the ground, and these are what I would say are on the harder side underfoot. They almost feel like a racing flat, but with a tiny bit more cushion, a bit more like stack height, obviously, than a traditional racing shoe. But the feel of them in terms of being quite hard underfoot is similar to that of a racing flat, I would say. They look really nice. I like this particular version. I think they look great. The sizing, what size are these? These are a women's 9.5, US 9.5. So I would say they're very true to size, because I tend to be a 9.5 in almost all shoes except for a couple of the brands, which I'll talk about later. So all in all, I think these are great. They wouldn't be my choice though, I guess, I actually wear these quite a lot in training for like fartlek runs and like hard runs. They're good on all surfaces as well. I should have mentioned that. They're quite comfortable. But if someone asked me to do a 5K and go for a PB, they probably wouldn't be my choice. But all in all, a great, solid, firm, great fitting, great looking shoe. Also with these, no hot spots, no blisters, no rubbing, no uncomfortable patches. Like I find on some shoes, there's always some sort of like hot spot or like spot that bothers you, but nothing for me with these shoes. Okay, next up we have a mouthful of a shoe. It's the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 2. I'm just going to refer to this as the Adidas or the Adidas. Okay, this was interesting, this shoe. It has an 8mm drop. It has quite, I'm not sure the exact stats on the stack height, but quite a high stack. I ran in this, I think I've done about 3 hours of running in this, and that was it. It feels fast, but it feels quite unstable. You can see, I don't know if you can see that, like it goes in, has this gap sort of missing across here, and goes in, similar to like the Nike Next Percent, goes in quite a lot here. So when you're running, it's okay when you're running straight and flat, but if you're turning at all, it kind of feels a little bit unstable going in the corners, and like there's a tendency to like roll in. Much too high stack for me. Yeah, I almost felt when I was using this shoe that I was running in high heels or like clogs. The other problem with that and feeling that like the instability is like when you're running on a path and then there's cracks in the path or like tree branches that are growing underneath the path, just like little uneven patches. I feel like these are quite, it's hard to judge anything that you're running on, or the surface that you're running on, just simply because the stack height's so high, and they are already quite unstable because of this. I think these don't have the full length, or they have full length carbon rods, which you can actually see some of the rods there. It's not like a full length carbon plate like some of the other shoes. But yeah, like I found them okay. I felt kind of like they felt fast when I first put them on, but yeah, I just think they don't suit a non-runner, someone from not a running background. Yeah, a traditional type runner who's been running for a long time would like these, but I don't feel like they're just for your everyday type runner. They're a bit too technical and complex for me. In terms of comfort with these ones, I do, when I was wearing them, I had a few little like bothersome spots. I wouldn't say enough to like cause any issues, but I just found like a few near the tongue and along here on the laces, and even on the back, like they just rubbed in a certain few spots. So yeah, that's obviously on my foot, and that may not apply to everyone's, but that was my experience in them. Next up, we have the Newbalance FuelCell RC Elite. This is version 2. Gosh, this shoe. So I'm really torn on this shoe. It's super comfortable. When you first put it on, it feels a lot spongier and softer underfoot than, well, pretty much all the other carbon shoes that I've tried. So I was, when I first put it on, I was skeptical because I don't really like that soft feeling underfoot. And it's just a weird feeling because all the other carbon shoes, like you can very much feel the pop of the carbon before running in these. So just like putting them on and walking around the house, I was like, I can't really feel that pop and that firmness of the carbon. They just felt too soft for me. But wore them on a couple of training runs with intervals, and like my pace was as good as it was in the other carbon shoes that I like. And I felt like with these, the faster you ran, the better they felt and the better they responded. I feel like they didn't feel great at, like in the warm-up 5-minute K pace, but once you sort of drop that speed down to race pace, they felt a lot better and they surprised me. I remember like starting the intervals and going, oh wow, these feel really good now. I actually wore these in one of my Ironman races last year. So my experience in training, after I had a good run in them and they felt good and they felt fast, I was like, I'm going to wear these for my next Ironman. And just for reference, my target Ironman pace is 4:25 to 4:30 pace. But I wore them for the Ironman, and how I felt differently about them is at the end of the bike, when your legs are fatigued, I actually found they felt like almost too soft. Which is strange because you think after an Ironman you would after the bike ride, with your legs being fatigued, maybe you would like that extra softness underfoot. But I actually found the opposite. For me personally, I found that getting off the bike, 180k is a hard bike ride, and then having these on for the run, I just feel like they weren't responsive or firm enough for me. So I actually felt like I was kind of fighting against the shoe a little bit to get my pace in the marathon. So again, a very personal opinion. If you're running a little bit slower than that, if you're an age grouper, you actually might like these shoes for the comfort factor. They are super comfortable. They do feel more responsive when you get going in them. And they are nice and soft underfoot. The stack height is quite big on these too, but it didn't feel unstable like the Adidas, I guess. You can see it doesn't have, it's quite wide here underfoot. So it doesn't have that bit that like goes in and makes the shoe unstable. So yeah, all in all, I really like these shoes. I don't think I would wear them to race again. I don't think I would buy another pair, but I can see that a lot of people would really like these. For sizing reference, these are US women's 10. I tend to, as I said, I tend to be 9.5 to 10 in most of these shoes, so I'd say they're pretty true to size. Okay, next we've got the ASICS Metaspeed Sky. So these were the original shoes that ASICS came out with before they came out with the second version, which I'll go through next. So the Metaspeed Sky, I wore these quite a lot in training. I put these on out of the box and I loved them. I was like straight away, wow, these feel fast and they feel comfortable. The foam felt great. I would say the foam in these felt most comparable to the Nikes. They just felt really good, like out of the box, putting them on your feet. They felt nice and wide and stable, and you can see that they are along the base there, along the sole. So I was really excited about these. The upper is like nice and a nice thin, light upper that's quite water repellent as well. So I was really excited about these. So I did quite a few training runs in these in the lead up to an Ironman last year. But I had a couple of little problems. I constantly got like blisters after about an hour and a half in these on the back. Again, nothing that would like stop me from running or racing or anything like that, but enough to cause a bit of discomfort. So again, that's just on my foot. And the other thing I kept getting at about the 2-hour mark of the run was just some hot spots on the balls of my feet. But I think that's because these are a 4 mil drop, and for reference, the drop is the measurement from the base down to the ball of your foot. So that's at 4 millimeters it's going down. And I actually most of my training shoes are an 8 mil drop. So I feel like those hot spots on the balls of my feet were because I'm used to running a certain way, and I'm used to an 8 mil drop, and these were only the 4. It's probably like landing more on my forefoot. But I love these shoes. Like if you're if you are used to a smaller or a slighter drop, I think these would be really popular and a really good option. As I said, I had been wearing the Nikes mostly before these, and I really struggled to find a shoe that had that same pop in the foam as the Nikes. And I almost feel like the ASICS is pretty much really comparable to that foam in the Nikes. It's super light, really poppy, really responsive. I really, really like these shoes, but they don't work for me personally just because of the 4 mil drop. But I'm keeping them because I'm almost tempted to try. I like them that much. I'm almost tempted to give them another try. Okay, next one is the second or the other model that ASICS brought out, the ASICS Metaspeed Edge. And this is the second version of that shoe. Okay, so the big difference between this shoe and the prior ASICS one I just showed you is the drop. These have a more traditional 8 mil drop, and they have less stack height. I would say that these are the most comparable shoe to the Nike Next Percent, the 4% Next Percent, whatever you call them. As I said before, the foam, super poppy, super responsive, very, very light, wide base, so you don't get that instability like you do with the Nikes. Love this shoe. I've worn this a couple of times racing, done heaps of training runs in it. They're definitely one of my favorites, and I think they'd be really popular with pretty much anybody. They're so comfortable. I don't get those blisters. I don't get the hot spots in these ones. There's nothing complex or too technical about them in terms of like the shape of them, the comfort. I just think they would suit so many people. In terms of sizing, these are a 10, women's 10 US or men's 8.5. I would say with these shoes, definitely size up half a size. As I said, I'm normally a 9.5, but I found the 10 a lot more comfortable with these. They're very roomy in the toe box. That upper's fantastic for racing, especially really water repellent, really light. All in all, definitely one of my favorites. Okay, we've got the Nikes here. As you can see, the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent. These were the first carbon shoes that I tried, and I love them. And then I went down the carbon shoe rabbit hole and obviously tried all these other shoes, and I've come full circle and pretty much come back to these shoes. There's just something about the foam in these shoes that just feels fast and feels amazing. I've worn these for probably half of the races I've done in the last 2 years, and for training runs. I love this upper. I love all the upper on the carbon shoes with Nike. They're all comfortable, water repellent. What else do I love? I love the feel of the foam. I love the fact that the laces don't go directly over the top of the bones in your foot. But all in all, it just comes down to the foam, and something about the foam and the shape of these shoes that just feels really fast. Every time I try to because I would like not to support Nike and go with a different brand of shoe. But every time I try the other ones, I always come back to these. Like I'll leave it a couple of months and then I'll pop these on for a harder, like a training run with intervals. And as soon as I put them on, I'm like, gosh, yeah, these just feel the best. I've run my 5K, 10K, and my marathon PBs in these shoes. My half marathon PB I actually ran in this Saucony Endorphin Pros. I just think these are an 8mm drop. They're like almost the perfect stack height. They're super light. That foam's great. I just really like everything about this shoe. The only thing I don't like is it's a little bit unstable, with, again, this coming in quite narrow in the middle of your foot there. So at first I thought it was me. I'd look at footage of myself running in these, and I would like roll in quite a lot. I was like, gosh, I thought I was a neutral runner, but I'm actually not. But then I realized it's this actual shoe. If you look at anybody wearing these shoes, from weekend warriors through to professional runners, if you look at footage or photos of them like really closely, you'll see almost all of them are rolling in, and that's just the way the shoe is. So I know some people have put these on and they literally can barely even stand in them. They just feel uncomfortable from the very start. I'm pretty lucky that I do have like a neutral type run style, very stock standard midfoot, landing on my midfoot. So there's nothing, I don't have any problems with my run form. So I don't have any problems with this, but I know some people just simply can't wear them because of the instability. They just don't fit right. But yeah, unfortunately, I keep coming back to these shoes for racing. I do go through that decision making, or the ASICS or the Nikes before every race, but I end up just going with what's comfortable and what I know and what makes me feel fast. Sometimes I think it is like a little bit of placebo, but yeah, these are the ones I've definitely wearing for my racing at the moment. One shoe that I did want to touch on that I actually don't have anymore because I sold it, but I did test, was the Nike Alphafly Next Percent, I think they call it. It was like a big no for me. Basically, I found it quite similar to the Adidas or the Adidas, just huge stack height, has this like narrow bit going in on them, and that little the air pocket on the forefoot. When I first put them on, the Alphafly, they felt great, super fast. I think any shoe that has the high stack height, it's just when you're walking around the house in them, it feels really fast. But I wore them in the lead up, in a training run with intervals in the lead up to a race, and it was just flat cement, and I felt fantastic, going straight and flat. But again, similar to the Adidas, as soon as you've got like any cracks or any little unstable bits and pieces on the surface that you're running on, or as soon as you've got any corners, I found them like awful in terms of stability. The stack height is like almost so high you can't even like judge really where you're landing, and you can't even really feel the surface that you're landing on. So I found that although they do feel quite fast, I felt like I was fighting against or just being cautious in some areas where I was running, and I think that takes energy, and therefore you don't get any benefit because you're slowing down and using all different muscle groups and things like that. So again, I think if I had just a straight out and back on a footpath, they would almost be one of my top choices, but that's just not realistic. We don't really run in conditions like that. So yeah, I wore them for a couple of training runs, and then I wore them for a race, and after I wore them for the race, I actually felt quite sore as well. And I think that was just because of the instability, because I was just moving my ankles around quite a lot and using different muscles. So I ditched those shoes after that race. But I feel like this Next Percent is definitely the best Nike version. Again, not technical, not complicated, not super high doesn't have that super high stack height, so it just feels safer and more comfortable. Okay, my top 3 picks. If someone said to me, you have to choose 3 carbon shoes, and you can't have any others, and they've got to do you for the next couple of years, my third choice would be the Saucony Endorphin Pro or Pro Plus. A bit of a workhorse shoe. And absolutely no problems with it. It just doesn't feel quite as fast, and the foam doesn't feel quite as good as the other one. So this would be my number 3 choice. Number 2 choice would be the ASICS Metaspeed Edge. This is the one with the 8mm drop and less stack height. Super comparable to the Nike Next Percent. Love this shoe. Would definitely be my second choice. Number 1, the Nike Next Percent. It just feels fast. Maybe it's a mental thing. Feels good on your feet. All my PBs have been running it. Lots of color selections. Just can't really fault this too much. The one thing I will mention about this, with this going in, sometimes after a marathon, like in an Ironman, I do feel a little bit like sore in my ankles. And I think that's from the rolling in these shoes. So that's definitely something to be aware of. If you're prone to injuries, I'm lucky that I'm not, but if you're injury prone, definitely I think the ASICS might be a better, more stable option for you to try. Last comment on the carbon shoe thing. Everyone's an expert out there, and people will try to say to you, don't buy a carbon shoe, you know, it's only beneficial if you're running 4-minute K pace or whatever they want to say. That's fine, and maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but I definitely am not running at 4-minute K pace all the time, and I am 100% faster in a carbon shoe, even running at 4:30 pace, than I am in a standard runner. And maybe it's not the carbon, maybe it's just the fact that they're lighter or the foam's lighter, whatever it is. Like in a race, if we can get a little bit of free speed, why wouldn't we? And at the end of the day, like if you want to buy them and you want to spend the money on them, go for it. If they feel better, buy them. And sometimes I think with racing, placebo is like a real thing. If it makes you, if you feel better, they feel better on your feet, you fatigue less, go for it. I say, don't worry about all the armchair experts telling you what you should and shouldn't do.